China faces a couple of serious problems. One of them is that it has an aging population, and secondly, it has a shrinking workforce. Those two problems, coupled with its shift from exporting products to the rest of the world to more internal consumption focused, means that it has to rely much more now on innovation than it did in the past. In the past, Chinese companies developed their capabilities to innovate by copying. And although there's a lot of criticism of that, it's something that many companies do. But over the years, they learned very quickly to move beyond straight copying to improving their products to satisfy their customers' needs. And Chinese companies have become extremely good at understanding their customers and tailoring their products just to suit the customer's needs. They've moved from that to a second stage, which we call going to world class. And so Chinese companies have achieved the ability to produce products that are world-class in quality. When you think of so many products that you and I buy every day, which come from China, we don't really question the quality anymore, particularly in sophisticated products like mobile phones and computers. So they've achieved that position. Now, not every company, of course, is in that state, but the better companies are. In the third phase, Chinese companies are now moving into the markets of the rest of the world, in which they've been selling for many years, but they now want to participate inside those markets to establish their own manufacturing and their own R&D facilities there. And so we call that the third wave. It's outward foreign investment by Chinese companies, which is not of itself new, because in the past they were doing a lot of foreign investment in areas to do with mineral products, with petroleum and so on, natural resources mainly. But now they're wanting to become insiders in the markets of the developed world, partly in order to establish brand names there or to buy brand names they don't have, partly in order to get some technologies that may round out their portfolio of technology, and partly also to develop management skills and buy market share. So we see a lot of Chinese companies now investing in Europe. They like German Mittelstand companies, for example, which often fit the characteristics Chinese companies are looking for: a long-term perspective, willingness to think strategically, family ownership, those sorts of issues which make it fit very well with the Chinese needs. They're also investing in setting up R&D facilities, sometimes in Europe, sometimes in the United States. So all of these represent a new wave in the outward activities of Chinese companies. China faces a couple of serious problems. One of them is that it has an aging population, and secondly, it has a shrinking workforce. Those two problems, coupled with its shift from exporting products to the rest of the world to more internal consumption focused, means that it has to rely much more now on innovation than it did in the past, and I've spoken a little bit about that. And then secondly, China is also trying to develop new markets for its products, and also to increase its influence in the rest of the world. So the One Belt, One Road policy, which is often called the New Silk Road policy, as you suggested, is really an attempt to create a pathway between China and Europe through Central Asia. And if you look at what's already happened, it's quite remarkable. There are railway lines and roads reaching right to the west of China and into Kazakhstan and the countries of Central Asia. And China is now exporting products through that system, but more importantly, establishing infrastructure in that area. So the One Belt, One Road policy is both an infrastructure development policy, which is helping those countries develop their infrastructure, but it's also being executed by Chinese companies. They're the main contractors doing this work. So it's providing also a market for Chinese companies. It's extending the political influence of China in that direction as well. But it's going to come at a very large cost of investment. China's estimated to have to spend something of the order of $4 trillion $4,000 billion in developing this market over the next 10 years. And when you add that to the other demands on China's investment, it's quite substantial. China is engaging also in a second element of its current policy, which is to develop some integrated large metropolitan regions. There's an area between Beijing and Tianjin, which will incorporate Hebei province, and it's commonly known as the Jingjinji policy. And that will attempt to integrate into one very large metropolitan region about 100 million people.